that? Don't you guys love that new intro? It's going to get a little snazzier in the next week or so because I've got some great news to be announcing, but I can't do it just yet. I'm waiting. Some of you already know the amazing news, but soon, very soon. And I am so excited. I already see the chat we've already got a few people in there. When we were talking to the guest, or I was talking to the guest in Cooper, I realized there was like 17, then 20 messages. So you guys are blowing it up. I love, love, love the engagement. You all are the reason that I do this. So thank you for everybody that's watching this live. And if you're watching it recording, you are still awesome and I still love you. If I haven't won you over, I hope that this episode does, and that you will hit the subscribe button and you will also like and you will share this video, because this video and this episode is going to blow you away. I'm so excited. So what are we doing today? What are we talking about today? Today is the first highlight series for the Outpost Gray highlight series, which is called The Female Voice of Innovation and Technology. And I'm so excited about our guest. Nina Ali is going to be on the show today. She is coming in and representing, and she has an amazing background, military veteran, hacker in the biotech space, all things IoMT. And we are going to be digging in not only to her technical background and her understanding in the cybersecurity space, but today is going to be about highlighting her as a woman in this space and her voice and what her journey has looked like going from the military and merging into the space and some of the challenges. And it's going to be amazing. We've done a couple pre-shows together. So let's go ahead and let's bring her on the show. But first, I have to do a fancy transition video that Simon Lindstedt helped me with. So thank you so much. You are the best for this. So let's go ahead and get Nina on the show.
That's very entertaining. Hi.
I love it. I'm getting all these like new graphics. You guys definitely share with me how you like the new graphics, if you hate them or not. We're still working out the kinks over here. So Nina, welcome. How are you?
Super. How are you?
I'm excited. That's how I am. I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. Your hair looks awesome. I got mine recently chopped, and yeah.
This is that post shower hair where I was like, I can't do anything. There's not enough time. So this is my hair in its super natural form. As a fun fact, a lot of people during the pandemic were like, oh, you got a perm. That looks really good. And I was like, nope, just washed it. That's all.
Oh my God. Yeah. If I did that, my hair would be literally like poofed out. But you have product in it.
There's product. There's a lot of things happening.
Yeah, I bet the viewers right now, all the men are like, "Oh my God, please stop."
Oh, this matters. Men need product too. Like, let's be clear.
Hair matters. I got mine chopped and cut, and I'm not happy about it, but that's okay. It'll grow out. It's hair, as everybody says.
Yes.
So enough about hair.
Okay.
It's all about you, but no pressure. Before we really dig into some of the overall questions that you and I have discussed and some things that I want to talk to you about, will you take a couple minutes and share your background and how you got to where you're at today in the biotech space?
So for full disclosure, I'm absolutely terrible doing my own bio. So I am channeling my people that do the bio for me the best. So originally from New York City, did some healthcare stuff. First weird job ever, or not weird job ever, but just job ever, was doing administration at a nunnery. That was amazing.
Wow.
We can talk about that. There's stories for days. Finished my bachelor's and I was like, you know what? I don't know what I want to do with my life. And every year I had gone back to have discussions with the different military armed services, right? And ended up deciding on the Marine Corps because I was like, if I'm going to do this, like, I just got to go hardcore. Like, this is my life. So did that. Did all the military things, did intelligence, got out and was like, what am I going to do with my life? And this amazing human at the Department of Labor that specifically worked with veterans was like, do you want to work with children? And I was like, no, I'm good. Do you understand computers? Yes. Started doing electronic medical records when electronic medical records were not really a thing, when the laws were not built in for it, built all of those things out. Eventually was like, what are we doing? What is healthcare doing? Went into finance because I recognized that they had a lot of laws, rules, regulations around what they were understanding and was like, they need, some of this needs to be brought into healthcare. So let me just go. In between all of those things, there's more, right? So did finance, learned this stuff, then went back into the government. I was a presidential innovation fellow at BARDA, doing like science stuff and helping them figure out what policy looked like for the new innovation things that they were doing. And between all of those things, I was building out the Biohacking Village. So out of the 8 years that it's run, I've run it for 7, and just bringing more of the what is actually happening in hospitals to the purview rather than just like medical devices, because medical devices are a major proponent, but they are not the only thing. So I just try to push that into as a reminder more than anything else for when people are thinking about medical and healthcare and biotech and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. What year was it that you got into the medical space?
2006.
Oh, wow. A lot has changed. Would you say that the changes have been for the better?
I suspect that depends on the angle you're looking at it from, right? Yeah. I think originally it was very easy for the physicians because you just wrote everything down, right? You saw the patient, they were in, they were out, everything was documented. You sent them with a piece of paper and they did the things. And now that everything is so invested and involved in the electric component of things, there's so much more to learn. The technology is it's embedded in your workflow. And maybe not necessarily that people are being engaged so much in how those workflows are being changed and how those changes change the patient experience and the physician workflow. I can keep going.
Yeah, no, I was still listening. You're like, you just stopped.
I know, because in my head, I was thinking, I keep seeing the little banner, right? And in my head, I keep thinking, when we talk generically, right, everybody, when we talk about innovation, what is innovation? You and I didn't talk about this, but it was the tangent that I kept going through in my head. When we talk about innovation, a lot of people are like, oh, innovation is like something brand new and amazing. But there's also the other side of it where innovation can just be using something differently.
Refining it.
Right, refining whatever that looks like. And I bring that up to a lot of people. There was a government report that I was helping to fix, and it had 21. I did a find and replace because I wanted to see something. How many times they use the word innovate, innovation, innovator, something like that, right? And I believe it was 21 times in like a 5-page document. And I said, nowhere in here did you define what innovation means to you. So you are letting the person experience this paper in the way that they want to. You're not giving them the parameters that you want them to understand it by. So that was every time I think about how we as a community, whether it's cybersecurity or medical, we talk about, the innovation of the system or the innovation of the design or the device. Just what exactly does that mean to the people that are receiving it just as much as the people that are building it?
Yeah, innovation is huge in the medical space. I wrote a couple of papers around IoMT devices, and that's for—
Just to clarify, IoMT, Internet of Medical Things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I was going to ask you, explain that to the viewers that may not know, what is an IoMT and why are they so critical to the medical facility and why are they so vulnerable? A lot of questions there.
Yeah. So IoMT, Internet of Medical Things. I said devices before I meant things, which is paradoxically different than Internet of Things because the example I give people is in my home is I have a Mac computer, I have a Samsung TV, I have a Viking stove, and I have a GE refrigerator that are all connected to the internet, but they're relatively simple, right? For intents and purposes of the conversation, like you can do the things and security them and it's going to be great. But if you are a patient, let's say in ICU in the intensive care unit, that's a very different situation. You are connected to multiple different devices that come from multiple different manufacturers that have different backends and secured differently, and they do very different things. So collectively, it creates a very different space. But let's add complexity to that. It's not just this one patient that we're taking care of, it's 420 patients that we're taking care of that have different devices connected to these patients that have to be very specific to you in what how they are running. Like I may have a higher heartbeat or a lower heartbeat, and we just did some cardiovascular surgery on me, and my pacemaker needs to look one way, and they have the nodes on me to make sure that it's running in the way that it needs to. You asked a bunch of other questions.
Oh yeah, I was talking about how are they vulnerable and why, why are they so critical and why are we hearing more about them and their vulnerabilities on the network?
Yeah. So I take notes because
Yeah.
as you can see, I have the memory of a gnat. The vulnerabilities, they're all so completely different. Not just in the company way, in the structure of the backend per device. So there's very different proprietary language that goes behind it. There's very different security measures that go behind it, and we're putting it all in one place on one patient and just figuring out what that looks like. And the biggest complexity for the situation is not that we are protecting, is not only that we're protecting it per device, per patient, it's that we are doing this in a hospital where there are gazillions of devices that need to be protected per patient, per device, per small ecosystem, per larger ecosystem. So when we talk about the devices, whether it's how they're produced, the back end, or physically the physical product, there's a lot of IP that goes around it. There's a lot of international law that goes around it. So being very particular, knowing the back end of things and the guts of it, it's just very hard.
Yeah, and for everybody, so they understand, an IoMT device could be as simple as a smart bed that's connected to the network that hasn't been patched, because who thinks about patching and updating a smart bed?
Feeling. I've had this conversation multiple times, right? Because it's not just if we're doing hospitals or ambulatory, like a clinic, right?
Yeah.
TVs are in that ecosystem. So maybe we just didn't patch our TV. Or I've worked in surgical oncology. Like that's the place that made me recognize and realize all these things. It could be the Sony PlayStation in the pediatric unit that has not been patched, and that's the open door that everybody is allowed into.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
That's why it's so hard.
Sorry, chronic
Oh,
interrupter.
oh no, you're good. You're good. We were talking a little bit about this too prior to hopping on, about talking about the healthcare industry and it being recognized, some of the vulnerabilities being more recognized, but it's an issue globally. Why is there more recognition now that we're starting to see that people are actually starting to talk about healthcare and the vulnerabilities associated with cyber attacks?
Yeah. COVID-19 brought with it all of its I'm going to say joys. There's a reason. And problems. So the joys were recognizing that we needed to be better together as a universal global entity. Same goes for that bad side of it, that healthcare is a global entity, right? So when I look at healthcare, it's not, oh, well, it's just an American issue, right? Or Latin American issue. The devices do not care about borders. They do not care about if you have national health or what it looks like. They are just there to do their job, and they need to be secured in the absolute best way possible that people can muster. But simultaneously, taking that comment into consideration, most hospitals work in the red, right? So
Yeah.
their funding is going to go to things that need to be done, like fixing the CT machine, the CAT scan machine, things like that. It may not be like, oh, we need to fix our security because that's a thing, that's the checkbox that we need to fix. So it's I'm looking at my notes. We were talking about the vulnerabilities for it, right? So
Yeah.
globally, now we're like, oh, healthcare is so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Don't use those words in the same sentence. But for years, years upon years, like my age years. It has been an open thing. When we had paper folders of patients, there were news reports of patients' records just being dumped in the trash, people pulling them out and being like, I am this new human. And simultaneously, we can still do that in this new technological way, right? Because there's openings, there's back doors to things were not secured correctly. Just admin to admin situations and getting in and being like, oops, got the things. So how do we, as patients, as professionals, as cybersecurity people, as a global society, look at this and go, we have an opportunity right now, right? COVID-19 has given us the opportunity to go, okay, let's take a pause. We have to take this pause because this is where we are right now. And we are under duress. And when you are under duress, no good decision is being made. And I understand that. But it's given us a lot more insight into the problems, the reactions, and possibilities of what we can and cannot do. So going forward, I think bringing in more patients, more physicians, to be heard by companies, legislature, policymakers, so that there's more understanding between everyone, and understanding that a 20-minute visit, which is what people have, may not be enough to understand the protocols that need to be done. Also, that there needs to be more education on everyone's side so that the doctors understand the medical compliance requirements for the medical devices, just as much as it's the inverse of medical device manufacturers need to understand that they need to educate the doctors more, educate the patients more, so that they understand it. Before this, I was talking to one of the doctors I know in Puerto Rico, and he was like, oh, I love that, because there's so many times the patient comes in with a new device and I have no idea what they're doing or what it's doing or how to move it.
Yeah, that's in what I don't know. The viewers, there is, what is it called? It's called not integrated medicine, but it's the new medicine that's coming out to allow like heart rate monitors to be monitored by doctors in facilities thousands of miles away. Have you heard? You've heard about
telehealth medicine?
What is it?
Telehealth?
No, not telehealth. It's actually the devices. And we talked about the other day and I cannot remember the name of it, but it's where it is telehealth, but it's taking medicine to a new level where you can monitor a patient.
Digital medicine? I'm just going to throw words out until maybe something happens.
No, it's not digital
medicine.
It's
cool. We can keep going.
It's not specialized. Yeah, we can keep going. I'll remember it. I wrote a paper about it. It was really interesting, but that just means there's going to be more vulnerabilities, but they're going to be on the person's body. The pacemaker can be manipulated and hacked because you can get into the network because it's tied into the network, it's attached to the Wi-Fi. And when you think about stuff like that, it's like, yeah. So that's where we're going with that. So I want to do a little bit of a pivot. Because now everybody kind of understand. Actually, really quick, I've got two questions on here that one's a statement and one's a question I want to bring up before we pivot. But Carrie, I think this is something that there's a misconception around. Usually medical devices aren't on the network since they can be hacked so easily. That is not accurate. Maybe in smaller hospitals, but generally the IT department, I mean, things are on the network and they're mismanaged. What do you think? I'll let you.
I mean, they can be in silos. They can have, in my head, I know, like there's a picture in my head. We have, oh my God, it's not siloed networks. It's not what I'm trying to say, right?
Microsegmentation.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. They're segmented networks and stuff.
Yeah.
But
that's a case by case.
It's case by case because a lot of medical areas, a lot of like clinics and hospitals, they may not understand all of those things, right? Yeah. It may be in the manual to do those things, but this is great. I love this because this is one of those risk moments, right? Where the hospital looks at risk a very different way than the medical device manufacturers do. The hospital is looking at risk as a patient situation, right? They need the best outcomes for the patient. Simultaneously, they do need to run that into the finances, yes. But there's also the reputational, and then on on the other side of this, with the medical device manufacturers and regulatory and all the other things, risk is sort of different. It's not, there's more of a financial risk on the other side. So when hospitals are doing all of these things, take into consideration that some may have them on the network, absolutely, because they've got the money to get people in and do those things. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think the average percentage of the whole budget for cybersecurity in a hospital is like 3%.
Yeah, it's not much. I know. It blows my mind. Yeah, that was and Carrie, no apologies needed. It was a great statement, because that statement right there shows what a lot of people actually think. And that's also in the financial sector. You'll be surprised at the misconception when I worked in fintech of how data is separated and siloed and microsegmented. And certain organizations do it. Certain organizations don't, because it all boils down to funding and their risk appetite. And hospitals, like you said, are in the red. So, and their IT funding is very bare.
Also, can we set precedents like now? Don't apologize for don't apologize at all, because you're not wrong, right?
100%.
There's so much knowledge to be had in this, in all areas, because we're all still learning, because this is so intricate and it's still evolving so hard.
Yeah, Carrie's good people. Okay, so we got Brock. This is a great question. And he was asking, what about supply chain and devices?
Yes, I love this. Okay, I am excited.
Yeah, I knew you'd like this. I love the China. Here we go. I'll leave it up so you can see it while you're like, yeah.
Okay. Yes. So all of this. There was, I think it was in 2019, a piece of legislature that came out, and I don't remember what the long name of it was, but it was Beat China, the Beat China Act, and it was because the supply chains were not super great, right, for what Americans needed. And that is when the citizen science community was like, we got you, hold on. And they were 3D printing the PPE. They were, some of the citizen science, community science labs had sub-zero freezers. So they were like, here, take whatever you need. We are more than willing to help. And that's when America recognized that there was so much dependence on other countries to do the things for us. So the breakthrough moment here is, I think it was last week. I don't know if there's a legislature name for it yet. Negative. It was 2 days ago. I think Manchin, maybe it was Manchin. He said, we need to reshore. Those are not his words. I am
rewording it.
Yes, yeah. I'm rewording. We need to reshore the supply chain of America back to the States, right? Back to the mainland. And one of the reasons that my family is from Puerto Rico, and I have done so much research on it, and I have a paper that I'm going to put out about this. It's about bringing all the medical requirements back to Puerto Rico, because I think it was 936. There was a law called 936 or something like that, and it ended maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 5. And it was like, it's not like there were no more tax deductions. So a lot of the medical device manufacturers, a lot of pharmaceutical manufacturers were like, cool, we're leaving. We're going to reshore somewhere else. And it's bringing things back to Puerto Rico, because the sites are already set up. It's literally turnkey. It's just bringing all of those things back. And then then this country would have the resources, the know-how, and the capability to bring all of those things back here.
Wow. Yeah, we'll see if this happens. It's going to have to happen.
Spoiler, we were having that conversation because I was like, I want to do a conference. I want people to understand the things. Yeah. So it's like, as an addendum to that, I think it's 80 to 90% of insulin for America comes from Puerto Rico, is made in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of class 3 devices that are made in Puerto Rico.
Wow. Okay. There was one more question that Michelle dropped in here. She said, what is that? Hegemonic? Yeah. Deployment of frequent vulnerability. I mean, I don't even know what the word was, so I don't know what this question is. So maybe you can explain it to me and help me understand it. Thanks, Michelle. So, love it.
Hegemonic is like territorial. So yes-ish. because there are countries that make their own medical devices. Example, China makes their own devices because they don't want the information to be filtered out of China.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of other countries are using the power players in the field. Can I see the rest of the question again? It was hegemonic IoMT.
Yeah.
Is it an issue that comes up frequently? A frequent vulnerability comes up. You know what? The last part, I don't know if I can give you a very good answer because there's not a lot of documentation on it, quite honestly.
Oh, she did a follow-up. She said,
okay.
I mean, like one type of device, one manufacturer.
So hegemonic devices.
Yeah, meaning like one type of device or one type of device or one manufacturer frequently have vulnerabilities that come up. Like do you see a pattern? Yeah. I think that's what she's asking about. Is there like, yeah.
Can I come back to that? I'm trying to just like the Rolodex of things in my head. Does anybody have one vulnerability that comes up often?
Or like a manufacturer that you see your device. I would be curious on the devices if there's one that seems to be like smart beds are more vulnerable because the IT, like there's probably, I would think that there would probably be a risk level of wanting to take care of like the life support machines and get those patched and secure and not worry about the smart TVs and smart beds and things like that as much.
I'm going to answer this in sort of a different way. For me, this is two parts, but it may not be direct. There are a lot of things, a lot of issues that go around legacy devices, because when they were first created, they were like, cool, just it works. That's great. And security wasn't a thing, right? So when they go to the hospitals or wherever they go, you have to wrap them differently. You have to wrap them in different kinds of security. So that's one part. And then I forgot the rest part. I told you. It's like my memory is gone. So hegemonic country 1-to-1. I don't necessarily think there's a company that continuously has issues. I think we continue to find the issues as more things come up.
Yeah. And I want to thank Eric. Eric's briefly put this up there. He's putting in.
Eric. Hi. I know him. Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah. He's putting some really good information. He's dropping links. So
good.
Very much.
Is it the FDA one? Yes. Okay. There's another FDA one that I think it's Mod.
Yeah. So if anybody's curious, he's dropping it on the LinkedIn side. But yeah, I've seen too. So thank you for that. Some good data coming in.
Eric, if you also want to drop the Mod one in there, por favor. Because Mod, I don't remember what Mod stands for, but I think it tells you like all of the vulnerability issues that have come up in devices.
Oh, this is good news, Carrie. Med tech companies issue alerts for
Yep, they did. They did.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a recent thing.
All right. So we've talked about medical devices. We've talked about your being in the space, the medical space. I want to do a pivot now. I want to talk about a little bit more about you, Nina. And we're going to go back a little bit, a few years. And we're going to go back to being in the military. And you and I talked about this. It's a unique space when you're a woman in the military, but not just in the military, in a combat roles position, like Marine, your first job as a Marine as a shooter before anything else. That's like your guys' thing. Not so much like that in the military, in the Army, but the Marines, like you're in combat and then you do your job. So with that being said, your mindset and you're trained a certain way. And being in the military and being a woman in the military, there's a lot of things that we have to shed about ourselves to be able to fit into that community. And one of the things we have to do is or for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you really have to get rid of and suppress those emotions. Like the part of you that makes you a woman, that empathy, that kindness. You can still be kind, but there's a certain level of it because they'll see it as weakness.
Yeah.
And then you do your transition into the civilian sector, and you go in a way, you have to completely reinvent yourself into a person where you don't want to lose yourself, but you can't maintain the person that you were, that made you successful in this environment, because you're not accepted now in the civilian world.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how that journey looked for you, having to come into the civilian space, do that transition, and how it felt, what you went through, what were those challenges that you saw, just a general thought of that journey for you into the civilian world.
I don't know what other. I do know, right? So the Marine Corps is very good at breaking you down and building you up to be a Marine. That is what you are. That is who you are. That is your sole purpose in life. And then when you get out, you are still a Marine.
Yeah. There's
no such thing as like, I'm ex-Army, right? For us, you are a former Marine, because that is still in you. That is still, it's an embedded device at that point, right? It's a part of you. The Marine Corps is very good at, and I am not jabbing at the Marine Corps. Like, I loved my time in there. You do have to become emotionless. However, you become so objective that, for me, it made problem solving for me better, because it wasn't a moment of like, oh, how would I feel if? It's like, what happens if?
Mm-hmm.
And you can do a million different functions simultaneously, because you have to make the best decision possible for the people on the other end that are going to live with you, that have to live through this as just as much as you, right? So it's protecting the person in front of you, behind you, to your left and to your right, and everybody has to come home. One way or the other, everybody is coming home. And I remember, so I've done science, like all of my bachelor's is not in science, but my master's are. And I remember having a talk with somebody, and I was like, you need to know what a centimeter is as opposed to an inch. And they were like, no, it's not a big deal. And I was like, no, it actually is, because the United States is the only country that uses the imperial system. Everybody else uses metric. So if I tell you move 1 centimeter to the left and you move an inch, you are dead. Yeah. That's a problem. So you need to understand what this means. So that, just having those different conversations and being, I don't want to say robotic, but being super focused, I think was really great. And just learning how to differentiate from the relationship to the logic. And then when I got out, my first interview was 2.5 hours long. And I sat up straight the whole time. My legs are crossed exactly the way that like you are taught. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if the Army teaches you that, right? But the Marine Corps, the way that the Marine Corps teaches a woman to sit. And he said, my
hands like in your lap like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're
like this. And we don't have our legs crossed. We have our legs flat on the floor, and they're like that.
Okay. Okay. So mine, they like right now they were crossed, but I pushed them back also. And I remember him saying, because he was former Air Force, and he was like, I can tell you're nervous. You haven't moved this whole time. And I was like, no, sir, this is how I was taught to sit. And he was like, oh, okay. Because I think I had been out for like 3 months. And when you talked about reinventing yourself, it never occurred to me this way. But when I was with my person at the time, I remember arguing with him and being like ravenous about whatever it was. And he's like, this is the problem. You were fighting with so much emotion that you're not being objective. And that was that moment of I've become a human again, right? But the other part of this is I remember distinctly taking my military service off my resume, because when I would go for interviews, the questions were invasive. It was like taking you back to a place where you're like, I can't live there anymore. And you don't understand that I can't live there because you've never served and you don't know what this feels like. So I took it off. I took it off my LinkedIn. I took it off of everywhere. I never talked about it for like 6-7 years. I just wouldn't discuss it with anybody until I was putting in those EEO papers, and they were like, what are you? And I was like, a veteran. And then people would come up and ask me questions. But yeah, it's the turnover going from military back into civilian life and regaining your humanity. It took me a very long time.
Yeah, it took me when I came back from my deployment in 2013, because that was my 2 combat deployments. I didn't tell anybody I even served. Like, I would be, dating a person, and it would be 3 or 4 months in, and something would be said. Maybe I had drill or something. It would be really casual. Something would be said, and they're like, "Wait, you're in the military?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." Like, it, yeah, that thing. I just got back from war less than a year ago. No big deal. And it was, even now, it's on my resume, but it's further down because now I have a more corporate experience. And so, like, that's really highlighted. And then it's literally one of the bottom things, one of the last things that's on there, because I don't want that. It's maybe, do you feel this way? I don't want that. I don't want people to be like, "Oh, she's a veteran." And veterans that are listening, maybe this can resonate with you. I don't consider it a bad thing, but it's, in a weird way, I feel like sometimes people just look at me differently automatically because I'm a woman and I'm a veteran, and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't know how to communicate with you now." And that's happened. They get a little weird. They're like, "Oh, you're a veteran?"
How
So
tall
they
are you?
automatically want to ask you, like, "Did you
How
shoot?"
tall are you?
5'7".
I'm 4'11".
Oh yeah.
So when people find out that I was in the Marine Corps, the first joke is, "So you were a submarine?"
Oh my God.
And
Because
my
you're
reply is, "No, I
yeah.
was a Marine."
You got yourself.
I was a Marine,
Yeah.
right? I had to do the things.
Yeah.
And just going back, right? So I kept my hair in buns, like low buns
Yep.
for years.
Years.
I just didn't let my hair down, and eventually, like, it happened and I was okay with it. But one thing I remember is I was sleeping or I was taking a nap or something, and my friend was like, "Are you," like, they woke me up, and I remember being like,
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" And they said, "You were doing this."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Uh-huh, that's fine. That's normal." And they were like, "But why are you doing this?" And then we had to have the conversation about, like, "Oh, you never discussed that." And I was like, "It's just not a thing. Like, I don't want to have that conversation with you because I don't want you to ask me questions. I want you to understand I did things. You don't have to understand everything."
Yeah. Yeah. And in the professionalism, so pivot a little bit and talk about, like, the professionalism and how different it is, it being in the military space and professionalism as a woman, and the way that we have to act, and what is recognized, or what is seen as professional in the civilian space. Because I know I've had my challenges, and I know you have as well, coming into the civilian space. When I first moved into the civilian space in 14, 15, I ran my own gun shooting company. I trained women hand-to-hand combat. I did active shooter training, and I was professional, but I was very in the, like, military-esque. So not a lot had changed in the aspect of my communication styles. What really shifted for me was redefining myself as a professional woman in the corporate sector. And I know that you've gone through that yourself. And I'm curious, what is that? Let me ask you this first. What does professionalism look like to you, for yourself, in your lens? What do you want? What do you personally do and professionally to be like, this is the vision, this is my brand, this is what I want to be seen as a professional woman in this space?
Oh my God, we were talking about this. So I Peloton. I'm gonna do that, like, mic drop on Peloton, right? So the woman I was listening to, shout out to Camila. She was saying, I have to take my professionalism seriously. I can't be mediocre. And I love that because it just hit me so deep in the feels, because I was like, yeah, every day, like this, for the most part, this is not my accent, right? And I've had this conversation with other people. This is not how I would normally talk. My voice, my normal speaking voice, is like an octave lower than this. My hair is usually straight. And it's to bring less attention to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have that Midwestern no accent sort of feel, everybody's comfortable, everybody's a little more happy, right? Like I have a very thick, deeply rooted New York accent. It's very harsh. So going into rooms immediately, I am judged because that's the immediate thing that they see, and then it's having the conversations, it's being talked over, and that's when I was in the military. A lot of the time, they'd be like, "What do you think? What do you think?"
Yeah.
Because I was the introvert in the room, and I would be like, "Not sure if that's gonna work."
Mm-hmm.
But there are other people in that room that rank higher than me, so I can't talk yet. But it was always the whoever in the room was one of the higher ranking people. They'd be like, "But what do you think? Because you've been sitting here this whole time and you've been quiet. What does that mean to you?" And taking into consideration all of the things. My communication style, I'm despite that this looks like I'm a lot introverted. I the team that I have now, like the biohacking team, oh my God, amazing. Like, can we give a shout out to them?
Yes, of course. Please do.
Amazing community of people. And like the people that I'm like, see, I'm getting all excited about it. Keep it inside. No, I'm not. But they're amazing. They are just radically different. And I love they just come with so many amazing, fruitful ideas. And I tell everybody, bring everything to the table. Be the comment I do at the end of my meetings, doesn't, whether it's singular or with the group, is, where am I wrong? I'm not afraid to be wrong. I want to be wrong, but I need you to explain why I'm wrong. Because just like in the government, just not in the government, but just like in the military, there's a human at the end of this, right? So we have to take all those things into consideration, do no harm sort of moment, but be accurate and bring the most knowledge and consistency to the things that we're doing.
Did you ever feel like during your transition, when you were leaving the military and you were going into the space and the medical space, can you think of a moment? Because I know I can you think of a particular moment where you were like, ooh, I handled this in a military manner, or I handled this a little too aggressive, and I really need to refine my approach, so people will listen to me better and I'll be received better? Can you think of a time where that happened? Because you were talking about your accent. So you've taken note of these things. You've taken note of your accent. You've taken note of your tone. So there must have been things that had happened in your journey to this point where somebody either told you, or you recognize, maybe I should tweak this, or maybe you saw other people doing it, different tones, different, their accents, where you're like, this person gets this kind of reaction and they speak like this. Maybe I can integrate.
So my accent changed when I was in, I think it was either 10 or 11th grade. My grandparents do not speak English. And I had forgotten my homework. And I went to the teacher and I was like, I forgot my homework. It's on the buto. And she's like, the what? I was like, the buto. And she's like, I don't know what that is. And I said, it's the thing with the drawers. And she's like, oh, the chest of drawers. And I was like, no, the buto. And she's like, are you saying bureau? I was like, yeah, buto. And it had never occurred to me that that wasn't a word.
Ah.
And then when she said it, I was like, oh, that's not English. Oh, and then I started transitioning to what this sounds like now. Have I ever handled something in a military way? Yeah, I absolutely have. I've done the table pounding of like, that does not make sense.
Yeah, and that'll freak out a lot of civilians too.
Yeah,
when you're like,
I don't yell. This is it.
Yeah.
This is as loud as I get. And even in the military, I did not yell, because I said, when you yell at somebody, you've already disturbed their homeostasis, right? That inertia, you've disturbed it. They are no longer listening. So for me to yell, or for me to get anything else other than what this sounds like, is a big deal. But the other part is, when I have feelings, my accent comes out, my voice comes out, and that's how people are like, oh, something is happening. We need to run, or we need to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've done a really good job. And Anissa actually mentioned,
Changing my voice. Thank you.
yeah, you've done a really good job balancing your masculine and feminine. Nissa made a comment here. She said, "I carry my masculine and feminine aspects on my belt like tools."
Mhm.
And I think that the women that come out of these combat roles and they move into the civilian sector and they're able to, because being objective is a wonderful tool for us to have.
Yeah.
And then being able to leverage our empathy and have emotions at the time when they're appropriate are also a very powerful tool. And we were able to teach and suppress the emotional side at our younger years, and now we've been able to like bring both of those in a way on our belt, as Anissa said, where you've been able to balance those things. You know when to be emotional, but being in the project management world and running big operations, being objective is so useful because you think about what is the third and fourth order effect of this, not what will people like me, how will Susan think of me? Like we push a lot of that out and we just execute because we have the mindset of like save lives. It's like it took me a long time to get past the you make like looking at the little associate and be like, you screwed up on payroll, you could have killed somebody. No, we're not at war anymore. But that's what we're taught in the military. Like one small mistake, you were talking about the centimeter or inch, we still think that way, but we have now been able to transition that into a viewpoint that helps us in the civilian sector.
Right. And in the same vein, I've been to so many tabletop exercises where people like a thing happened and everybody is jumping to that conclusion of, well, we need to do this. And I'm like, no, you've bypassed 1,000 steps before you get to this. Like, as an example, with medical, the thing, those were words. Those were not the words I wanted. If there's a vulnerability issue, everybody's like, we have to run and tell the FBI. And I'm like, but what are you telling them? You're just going to call them and be like, hey, we might have something. No, you need to do a little bit of research. Just, we saw this flaw, this may be an issue. We're not quite sure, but these other things happened prior in this moment. And we did take it off the floor or we didn't. Right. You need to give a report.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that whole like, let's run to the conclusion, like, but there's more. There's way more in between that we need to justify.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to show this comment because this is hilarious and we can totally relate to this. Michelle posted this. She said, funny story. My husband had one of those moments the other day. A guy was squeezing a water bottle nonstop during a meeting and he got up and smacked it out of his hand.
Right. And I feel like that's like sound, right? Sound is one of the people. Sound is one of those things of like, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, but we have to use our words where it's like, hey, I would be like, I've had to learn to be like, hey, would you mind stop crinkling the water bottle? But I love the approach of just walking over, just smacking it. It's very military.
Can we move that just a little bit? Like if I did that though, would people be cool with it?
Right. No, they typically would be like, oh, she must be having one of those days. And
it must be a PTSD day or like a PMS day, but one or the other. And it's like,
Yep.
I had someone, perfect example. I was countering somebody at work about something and he asked me if he was like, are you on your period?
Like, wow.
What?
See, that crossed the line. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, do you talk to your wife this way? Like, do you just go ask her if she's PMSing or whatever's going on? And he's like, and I said, here's the thing though, she's your wife. You don't do that to me. And he was one of the people that I reported to at the time. And he's like, no, I didn't mean it that way. And I was like, I don't know what other way you could have meant it, sir. But like, can we keep this PG from now on? And that stopped.
Yeah, unless you're buddies, you can't. Yeah, you can't boss an employee. Yeah, that crossed a line. I would have said something too. Okay, so we've got about 11 minutes, and I want us to touch on some things. I want to talk about Biohacking Village because this is like a big part of your life. 7 years ago, I mean, you were part of this program for 7 years. You're an executive director. Can you take a couple of minutes and tell everybody what is the Biohacking Village?
I thought you were going to say, what does being the executive director mean? And I was like, great question. So Biohacking Village has been around for 8 years. I've run it for 7. And essentially it's bringing the community, the biomedical technology, cybersecurity, citizen community science people together to do better for the whole sector, the healthcare sector, the bioeconomy, essentially. from my experiences being that I worked in the hospitals, I tried to bring more of what happens there. So physician point of view, patient point of view, tech, blah, 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 into it. So it went from speaker lab of people coming in, talking about the cool new technologies that they've been working on, threats, etc., to being 5. So we still have the speaker lab. We have medical device lab where the manufacturers come in, they bring their devices, and the hacker community, researcher community comes in and breaks them essentially and says, this is what we found, we can help you fix it. Catalyst lab, it's more hands-on, so building, programming, and breaking. Capture the flag, so it's one of those experiences, like we all know capture the flag, right? We're like, oh, we're going to do the things. But with medical, it's all like, this is a keyboard and we're going to learn from here and talk about other medical devices and get you into the dark web. So it's that learning flow to get people more engaged and embrace it. And then the last one is the tabletop exercises. So traditionally they're very long-winded, etc. And I'm like, military teaches you things, right? So how are you going to learn? You have to do more hands-on, because what you don't hear, you feel. So we're going to have talking sessions, but it's also going to have other parts to it to get more people engaged.
So the Biohacking Village really helps us move technology in the medical space forward by identifying the vulnerabilities. Like you take these medical devices. Okay, so understanding that, do you think, because you're an expert in the medical space, in the medical technology space, this is where you've been thriving. Where do you see us going in the next 3 to 5 years, especially? And I want you to like take a step back and think about the future of where we're going to be, like including quantum computing, the emerging technologies that we see, the increase of IoMT devices and just IoT devices within the next few years. Do you think that there's enough awareness right now, and will there be in 3 to 5 years? And B, do you think that we are going to be able to withstand and be ready for a cyber attack in this space? Or could it be in the next 3 to 5 years, could we be, in a really bad position because of a cyber attack? And that's when we wake up.
So let's clear this up. Healthcare has never not been in a cyber issue, right? It's just that COVID-19 has been more like, oh, surprise, there are issues. And now they're being exploited a lot more because the opportunity is here, because hospitals are overwhelmed, etc. What do I think is going to happen next? I think, so quantum, I think it was NIST. NIST is working more toward quantum technology right now.
Yeah.
Other countries already are doing things toward quantum. But when I think about quantum, I think about digital health, because there's going to be so much more identifiers out there. There's another legislation that's coming out. It's either coming out or it has come out. But the government wants to do more toward genomics, which is awesome, right? Know who you are, know where all your issues are. But then that also means you know exactly who I am, and I know exactly who you are. And while we can do more precision medicine with all of that, we can also do other precise vulnerability issues with those things. So if that's the case, so like comma, right? So we have digital health, genomics, we can figure out what's going to happen next with people or not happen next with people. I was talking to somebody that was doing automotive vulnerabilities and health and things like that. And I said, do you know what I really want? And like, please take this idea, because cars are not my thing. Oh, I know this word in Spanish. It's the handles, the handle, the car wheel, wheel. What is
steering wheel? Steering wheel. Yeah. I got you.
Oh, I love the multiple language things. Anyway, so the steering wheel, I was like, right. But when you're on like when you're on the things at the gym, you ever realize those metal pieces that are here? It tells you your heart rate, because your thumbs have their own heart. It tells you your heart rate. I was like, what if the car knew if you were going to have a stroke, if you were going to heart attack? The steering wheel could look into your eyes and see if maybe something else was going on because your pupils got too big or too small. And it could either guide you off
Yeah.
the highway or
Yeah.
take you to the hospital.
Yep.
Because
Brilliant.
those things matter, because
Mhm.
one, you're saving your life, two, you're saving other people from other kinds of damage. And that's a lot of information. Just one, genomics of knowing who you are, and then being able to calculate the the difference between what your heart is normally at, what it's not normally at.
Yes.
Also, if you're doing this, your hands sweat, right? So also figuring out your sugar levels. So
Yeah.
if you're diabetic, it can tell you like you need to do a little insulin pump right now or have a Skittle. Things like that. I think those things are super important. Also, if you're like, there's just a lot of things with cars that I think about and how visual health would work. I think the way that we maneuver healthcare is going to change also, because now we recognize that, I'm using recognize very loosely, how global healthcare is and how much things affect each other. So maybe it's that we start working together in a much better fashion to say, yes, these are issues that we found. These are not issues that we found. We need to address these things. Like as a weird example, it wasn't until 1996 that the FDA was like, we can do things now with females in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
All of the meds that, for the most part, humankind has been taking have been geared toward white men.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're opening it up to a different breadth and depth of people to do the things. But the other part of this situation is that COVID-19 made us recognize that we don't trust medicine. We don't understand it, right? Most people, when you ask them, like, what do you remember from biology? It's mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Yes, absolutely it is. But there's so many other things that go along with that. And because of the industry that we work in, virus for us is essentially the same thing as virus in bio. There's so many different parallels that, and maybe it's because of language, but we can do the parallels and we can work better together and we can make the storyline work. So putting in effort of effort and understanding and awareness to understand healthcare better,
Mm-hmm.
do those things would be awesome. Do I think we can withstand another cyber attack? That would mean that we had stopped sustaining cyber attacks at some point.
Yeah. Good point.
So do I think there would be an increase? There's a shift left, like in the SDLC, right? There's more of a shift left to understand that we need to secure devices early, and we need to take into consideration end of life of those devices now, before it's gone out into the public. Also, just SDLC can have one of those confusing moments, because it should be SSDLC, it should be secure software development lifecycle. But also along with this idea is it's not just software that we are implementing into people, it's also hardware. So it's not like you would ram an iPhone up into you and be like, control my heart, it's gonna be great. Taking into consideration the different levels of things within the devices, from absolute zero all the way till completion.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's great. And it's going to be an interesting space in the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of things are going to shift in all sectors of cybersecurity and IT, because just how we're shifting within technology. Okay. So we need to wrap, because we've got Simply Cyber coming up. And I know a lot of people are going to be jumping into that. So everybody raid Simply Cyber, kicking off in like 1 minute. But before we wrap and I kick you off and put you in the green room, what are the final thoughts that you want to leave with the viewers?
This is hard. Biomedical, tech, sec, all of it. It's really hard. And if you want to be in the sector, I totally think you should. It may not even be 5 things. It's like one massive thought. Healthcare is the one industry that takes all of the other critical infrastructures into it. So when you talk about like Colonial Pipeline, cool. Hospitals also need gas and oil, right? And electricity and water and all the other things. So if you are going to be in healthcare in any fashion, understanding that all the critical infrastructure is in there, and at the end of this will always be a patient. And kindness and understanding will get you reasonably far in this. You also need the tenacity to say, that ain't right. What you just said, that is not how that works. The workflow is wrong. We need to do this again.
Yeah, I love that. What is the best way for people to be able to find you? I threw your LinkedIn in the chat for anybody.
I can give you my email address because maybe I answered that faster than everything else. So Nina, Nina at villageb.io. B as in like beta or Bravo.
I love it. Village B. Okay. Awesome. All right. I'm gonna put you into the green room, Nina. You're the best. So glad to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, you are awesome. That was awesome. I know a lot of you probably are scooting over to Simply Cyber, which just kicked off or should be kicking off in the next minute. If you have not gone over there, I'm going to wrap up here and I myself am going over there. But really quickly, I want to show you guys a couple of things that we've got kicking off tomorrow. I'm really excited about this because we're going to be supporting Wicked 6. And I'm going to be doing a dual interview tomorrow with two amazing women from around the world, one in the Philippines, one on the West Coast. I believe Marie's on the West Coast. And it's going to be a dual interview, 30 minutes with both these women. They're taking part in Wicked 6, the cyber games. It's a 24-hour event. If you haven't signed up for it, I highly encourage you, any women that are listening to this, all levels are welcome to join. You don't have to have a certain experience level. It is running from 23 March to 24 March. So definitely hop on that. But this is happening tomorrow, live stream from 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Would love to see you there. And then I'm doing another one, a dual interview on, that says Friday. I just realized that is a typo. That should say Monday. And I just pushed these all out. Good job, Jax. So March 21st from 3:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be interviewing these two amazing women that are hacker women, and they are also taking part in Wicked 6. And then on the 24th, after the event starts to close down, I will actually be hosting a panel, and I will be interviewing some of the women that were partaking in the event. So go and sign up if you haven't. All of the money that is being raised is going to support Cyber Jiu-Jitsu, a nonprofit to support women in the cybersecurity space. Can't say enough about these. Thank you, Kimberly, for all of your help and everything. She's doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So reach out to her if you have any further questions. And you guys, that's all I've got. Thank you again. If you're new and you're just seeing this, make sure to hit that subscribe, share this with others, and go ahead and head over to Simply Cyber. And make sure to tag in the chat, #Outpost Gray in the Simply Cyber chat. Bye all.